Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're all doing fantastic. And that you're all having a great day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. You will be extremely pleased to know we have a lot of not insane, completely out of the left field kind of news today. I was very shocked. I was just expecting today to be another completely abnormally weird news day. Anywho, welcome back to another edition of where do we go now? Where everyone's trying to figure out where do we go now. As cryptocurrency prices continue to run amok and they move up and then they move down and everyone's questioning the state of the actual market. It does seem as if everyone is coming to the general same conclusion, which is nice to see. Now, sometimes you might hear me say that in certain videos where I'm like, no, it's a good day because everyone came to the same conclusion. The interesting part is that years ago they did not. So quite often we would have 7 differing ideas as to where the market was going to go, and it caused quite a bit of confusion until we actually ended up moving specifically in one direction. And alas, here we are. So, in the news, Grayscale has published a detailed report outlining expectations for the third quarter of this year. That's now. We're in the third quarter. The year is literally more than half done, which is absolutely insane to think about. The report underscores the potential growth of AI-related coins and the adoption of Ethereum spot ETFs. Grayscale forecasts significant investment inflows into Ethereum ETFs, boosting the value of tokens within the Ethereum ecosystem. The trendy news, as we have seen for the last month or so, revolves around Ethereum ETFs. People think that this is going to be a major boom, kaboom for the market. Things will be pushed up. Coins that previously before didn't have a lot of movement that are built on top of Ethereum are going to also benefit from this movement as well. This seems to be the general consensus, and I am very happy that nearly for once people are coming to a proper conclusion about what could happen from the ETFs, and I assume this is only because we've seen the movements previously before from the Bitcoin ETFs. But don't forget, we also had a lot of negative Nancys before as well when the Bitcoin ETFs launched. For those of you who were not here or do not remember, there were a lot of people who were saying that the ETFs would cause Bitcoin's price to go down. I mean, going from 17, 25, 30 something, what have you, $1,000 per coin, that we'd go down to 18,000 once again once the ETFs launched due to lack of interest, due to lack of no money flowing through them. Prices began to pump. People were like, oh, snaps, people are buying up Bitcoin. And then, kind of the exact same thing. So for those of you who have somehow managed to matrix dodge the last couple of weeks or months worth of news, the amount of ether being accumulated by whales is staggering. It's actually cause for concern when it comes to rich people absorbing as much money into their pockets as possible. And a large portion of the ether that's being purchased is from crypto exchanges. That money is then taken off of crypto exchanges and is being locked into Ethereum protocols, what have you, different ones. The last metric that we got was for staking within the Ethereum network, as the only way to create ether is to have ether by staking your ether to create new ether. It creates this loop of you become richer the more that you have, the more that you have, the more that you create, the more that you create, the more that you have, and you kind of get the general idea. And the amount of ether on crypto exchanges out of all the Ethereum that exists, 90% of it is not on crypto exchanges, has been taken off of crypto exchanges, and we have roughly around 10% of all the ether left sitting on crypto exchanges. This number is expected to continue dwindling as there is once again only 10% of all the ether that there is on crypto exchanges. So as the ETFs pick up, as more of them launch around the world, as more companies do, all those other things, the idea is that these companies might be more inclined to accumulate larger numbers of Ethereum than they did Bitcoin, simply from a price perspective. So if you have Ether at $3,000 and Bitcoin at 60, 70, whatever the day's Bitcoin price might be, therefore you can get a whole lot more Ether for what you would be able to get for Bitcoin. Therefore, the accumulation would be a lot higher. A lot of companies have already been into Ethereum, in case you missed that over the course of the last 8 years as well. And therefore, if that picks up and they're all buying Ethereum and there's not a lot of Ether left, and people continue buying off of crypto exchanges, you get the point, right? The interesting fact to always be had is that if Ether does well, altcoins do exceptionally well. So everyone's kind of hoping and wishing and praying and finger crossing for the idea of Ether literally like starting the bull run again or beginning the next phase of the bull run, because people have charts on Twittergram and they keep showing that there are different phases to the bull market. So apparently like we literally just left the first phase. The second phase is supposed to begin now at some point around this year. You know, we trend sideways, we dip down. There's a bear trap, there's a mongoose trap, and all these other animals get trapped as well. And then we move up, and then at some point that also phases out or fizzles around January of 2025, which apparently is supposed to be another light lull period. And then the ending of 2025 is the big kaboom shabam that we've all seen and anticipated before. The approval of these ETFs could lead to increased trading activity and support valuations for layer 2 tokens, DeFi protocols, and essential assets on the Ethereum network. Ethereum is the most used blockchain. I keep seeing people writing on the interwebs that other chains are near Ether or going to take them over. Or people keep writing things like, this terrible altcoin just beat Ethereum in this metric. And I'm like, it didn't. No one's using that chain. I can completely promise you. So yeah, the optimism is sky high. I wish I could explain to you in words how bullish I am on everything. I know that's going to sound insane. The amount of adrenaline and euphoria, not the TV show, but like the feeling that is encapsulated in my mind, it won't leave. I can't put it into words. I'm buying across the board at a rate that at which I haven't done in a very long time. I personally feel, regardless of where prices might be today or tomorrow or where they've been, we're set up for something really spectacular here. And it's causing me and my friends, and this is, I think it's the energy pushing back into the room. You know how like before, you were here like a couple of months ago, you could kind of feel everything was relatively lull. I'm feeling like the electricity again, pulsating. Everyone who I talk to, everyone who I mention things to, a lot of my friends who were looking to like nearly just invest in real estate, we're talking about NFTs again. We're talking about this kind of market. We're talking about this coin. We're talking about like potential like amount allocations. And it's something where we weren't before just a couple of weeks and or months ago. So it's nice to feel this energy back in the space. Let's see what ends up happening. I think everyone is kind of strapped in and more or less ready to go. Yeah, that's the Grayscale research, talking about where the market could go, how things could be for Ethereum. And yeah, let's move on. Also sure, why not? In an interview with someone called Frank Chaparro on The Scoop, Ripple's president, Monica Long, elaborated on the company's plans to launch a US dollar stablecoin that we now know is called Real USD or Ripple USD, RLUSD, and discussed the potential for an XRP exchange-traded fund. This comes after gaining significant regulatory clarity, from U.S. courts last July regarding XRP status, not as a security, but as a commodity. So, this conversation seems to be with us. I think this is the brand new, never-ending story. The idea of the XRP stablecoin is quite still in the minds of a lot of people, as we have gotten news and indication over the course of the last couple of, I want to say a year. It's basically been a year at this point that there's a lot of demand for stablecoins, like a massive amount of demand that we, the normal retail investors, simply can't begin to actually understand. And therefore, Ripple's making a stablecoin. At the time of me making this video, there's still no date as to when this is going to launch, but the expectation is soon. Or rather, I'm expecting them to launch this soon, because doing it at the end of this year seems a little nonsensical. You kind of want to launch it before the bull run ends up happening, so that you make sure that you gather the extra momentum. So anyone on a crypto exchange who might want to list this will list it now, as opposed to like in December or next March. And anyone who decides they don't want to use Tether or Circle anymore, for whatever the case might be, they may use this coin as well. So I assume this would be relatively soon. And the idea of the XRP ETF is swirling around even more, as we're seeing other companies begin to list filings for other altcoin ETFs. I will hold my tongue on that simply because I personally don't think that those are going to list, but we'll see in the future, backing away from that conversation. So the idea continues to be that the lawsuit might be over relatively soon. At the time of me making this video, the lawsuit is still not over between Ripple and the SEC. Binance just had an, air quote here, a major minor win. I don't know. In that, I saw news articles that the a judge ruled in the favor of Binance, and therefore the SEC lost that round of a lawsuit. And now Ripple and Coinbase are using the precedents from that lawsuit, or whatever the thing that the SEC lost, and now in their lawsuits, and it's being touted as a win for the industry. I didn't read into it. I'm sorry if I'm not like a reading lawsuit person kind of guy. They're very drag-on-y. I assumed years ago that any lawsuit would have been thrown out the window or completely dismissed. Oh, you know what was dismissed in late news? The lawsuit against Roaring Kitty. For those of you who didn't see it, Roaring Kitty being the guy from GameStop, and the new Netflix documentary movie. It was okay. I mean, watch it. It's not like the best movie ever, but it's fascinating to watch if you have some time. Somebody launched a mega lawsuit against him like 2 weeks ago, claiming that he was something with securities or some other nonsense. And then the lawsuit was quickly withdrawn because it was like, you're just being a greedy, I can't say that word. So, yeah, I was expecting the Ripple lawsuit to also be gone, but corruption's a witch. And therefore this lawsuit is continuing to go on. According to Long, the decision to introduce a stablecoin is driven by the needs of Ripple's existing payment clients and banks, emphasizing the role of stablecoins in facilitating cost-efficient and transparent transactions. They said, the US dollar stablecoin is aimed at optimizing efficiency in major payment corridors where liquidity is abundant, such as the USD to Euro transactions. In contrast, XRP will continue to serve as a bridge asset, particularly in more costly and less liquid payment corridors, Long explained. One of the original core ideas of Ripple and XRP, and this is why a lot of people love and loved Ripple and XRP a number of years ago, and this is where a lot of the hate from Bitcoin maximalists began to come from, for those of you who don't know. The original idea was that Ripple was going to be a company for usage by banks. The idea was, if cryptocurrencies do take off, banks are going to be far less likely to adopt Bitcoin. We see them buying Bitcoin, but the idea of them using Bitcoin as a daily means of transacting would probably be very low, because Bitcoin transaction fees were then and still are quite high. So Ripple said, okay, we have XRP, and we're able to actually facilitate transactions around the world at a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny. I think it costs like less than 1 cent to be able to have a transaction around the world. Ripple, Jack Dorsey, and in the long ago, Charles Hoskinson had the idea of using cryptocurrency as a way to actually bring the masses into the traditional financial world. When I mean the masses, I mean the 4 billion plus people who are not connected to the current economic system that we have. So nearly often, I was going to say sometimes, but nearly often, people in the crypto space kind of, hold these banks and these institutions on their shoulders. The people who destroyed the world's economy in 2008, 2009, everyone has rushed back to them as a way of, please help us. We love you. We need your money to boost cryptocurrency prices, as opposed to trying to, get the people who need crypto into crypto. And then we would still achieve those miraculously wonderful, amazing, cool, and awesome prices. The idea was, and still is, for those of you who don't know how almost said money union, Western Union and MoneyGram work, because I still see them. When I travel, it is almost like stepping into the past to see these companies still existing and seeing people still standing on lines outside of their stores or what have you to transfer money. The way that the old system works, and even more so if we can focus in on MoneyGram and Western Union, is that you as a company have to have a pre-funded account. So let's say you are in the Bahamas and you're trying to send money to the Philippines. Well, the Bahamas is kind of wrong. Let's say you're in Peru and you're trying to send money to the Netherlands. It doesn't matter. You as a company have to have a pre-funded account for the money that you're trying to send. So if you're trying to send from a peso into another currency around the world that isn't as liquid as the US dollar or the yen, you as a company, you literally have to have that money there, present with you, to be able to facilitate the transaction. So sometimes MoneyGram, Union, Western will sit there and they'll tell people, we don't have enough money or liquidity to be able to send that amount, or we can't do it. Can you come back in a couple of hours? Because they need to swap from one currency into another to be able to get the other currency, to be able to receive it, to put it back into their system to say, now we can do those transfers. The old system is terrible, and I mean literally absolutely horrible, and that's a discussion that we were having a number of years ago when it came to SWIFT, which no one is discussing anymore, which I think is really, really funny, how fast the cryptocurrency space is kind of morphed into this not the word's not lull, but kind of forgetting the sins of our banking fathers and just assuming that everything is, honky-dory with them all over again, when it absolutely isn't. So the people from XRP, Ripple, basically were like, cool, if Bitcoin can't facilitate these transactions, we will work with these other countries who are not a part of the system, or if they are, they don't have huge levels of liquidity. Our coin is fast enough to be able to transact back and forth, to be able to have no slippage. The idea is, if you are trading or selling or moving around Bitcoin or Ethereum from one country to another, and more so for Bitcoin because the transactions do take a while, especially if you're not using Lightning and or Liquid. If you've ever or not used a Bitcoin transaction, it does take a while sometimes. And at that point, over the course of I think it's 10 minutes to actually mine a new block, the price probably has moved in some sort of way. There is some kind of slippage. So you still get the Bitcoin amount, which is what most Bitcoin maximalists tend to only care about. They don't care about any relative slippage in the price. They want to know that they still received that 1.4 Bitcoin. They got as many Satoshis and as many sats as they wanted. On the other hand, if you're talking about a financial institution, they don't want any slippage. If you're trading from dollar to dollar, you don't want any movement. You see that you are still getting the exact same amount. So we saw from a number of years that a lot of companies were actually just using XRP to move money back and forth, and they would basically facilitate the transfer in US dollars, what have you. It would swap into XRP, that XRP would go around the world, and because it was so quick, it would immediately then swap back into the local currency. So using XRP to actually facilitate this. Since then, we've seen a gigantic shift in the way that the world is working when it comes to cryptocurrencies and when it comes to stablecoins. A lot of countries, oh my gosh, I'm so out of breath, have kind of foregone. My nose is also stuffed. I don't know why. It's been raining, but I still have, what do you call it? Allergies, and it's a bit of a conundrum in my head. So a lot of countries have literally foregone the idea of a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, and they're now creating their own stablecoins. This is why you might have heard or might have seen, which is also quite bizarro, a lot of people are talking about stablecoin regulation and how it's going to make this space amazing and great. And there's also Bitcoin maximalists talking about stablecoin regulation as a good thing, when I think we've nearly lost the entirety of the ethos of the original idea of what crypto is for, but alas, dragging it all back. So I assume that there were some banks and some institutions, because we know that Ripple, the company, is working with tons of banks around the world and tons of central banks around the world, and they're helping them to create their central bank digital currencies that are either going to A, be on top of the XRP blockchain, and or B, going to be facilitated through Ripple's system of something and use XRP in the background. So as these stablecoins become more popular and regulation becomes more prominent, the idea basically is, as they said, we saw that there was like a need for this kind of thing. Because where you could argue that there might be some kind of slippage in XRP's price during the 1 second, depending on how crazy the market is, what have you, a stablecoin basically negates that entire thing. You also catch more firms with stablecoins than you do XRP. I was trying to do the whole like you catch more bees with honey than with vinegar thing, but it didn't work out as I said it out loud. The idea being, if anyone is hesitant about using a cryptocurrency such as XRP, the hesitance nearly disappears when you say the word stablecoin. We have a stablecoin for you to use instead. The stablecoin market is ginormous. They're doing trillions of dollars every couple of months, every season, what have you, worth of transaction. The fees that these companies are making from the stablecoins are in the billions to tens to hundreds of billions of dollars. And therefore, companies want to get in on it as well. If we see that the stablecoins continue to rise and are really popular, launching one on your blockchain and then also subsequently having central banks using them as well, as it is English, as it is expected that we are going to see a 10x rise in stablecoin amount and also liquidity. Therefore, this is, of course, why they are doing it. It continues to get into the news as far as Ripple and XRP, I think because a lot of people who are holding XRP or in that ecosystem are just kind of waiting for the last domino to drop, the last domino basically being Gary Gensler and the SEC, end the lawsuit, stop all the madness so that we can see where the market is going to go. It's one of those things where, like on Twitter, if you hover over something and read for too long, the algorithm is like, well, this is exactly what he wants to see. So I'm seeing a lot of people discussing XRP. Why isn't the price moving? A lot of people are new to the ecosystem. You have to explain to them the whole SEC, Gary Gensler saga and yada, yada, yada. And it just kind of is what it is. I mean, not that it's good. No one should be, okay, corruption's fine. No, like this is the system that we've been given. And this is why, literally why, more people need to advocate for proper decentralization and cryptocurrencies and getting away from the monsters who rule the current system, and not assume that because someone retweets a photo of Cookie Monster holding a Bitcoin that they're going to send prices to the moon. So yeah, never-ending story. Question mark. There's still a lot of news as to when the lawsuit would end or could end. And also that really weird day where Brad Garlinghouse, didn't he say September or something like that? I think he was just trying to be in the news. I'm not really sure. Yeah. That's the Ripple and their stablecoin and their potential ETF, and also them going public and all the central banks that they're working with news. And yeah, let's move on. So you'll see a lot of weirdness has been happening as of late, and I'm not really sure where a lot of this or any of this is actually going to go. So in the news, Nigeria's Securities and Exchange Commission has given cryptocurrency exchanges and digital asset traders 30 days to re-register their businesses or risk facing enforcement actions. Nigeria became lightly famous in the crypto, or popular, I should say, in the cryptocurrency space a number of years ago, as similar to Brazil and, oh gosh, I want to say Singapore, Japan, South Korea, lightly Hong Kong, but Nigeria was one of the places that seemed like it was going to put crypto on its shoulders and be like, cool, we got this. As a place that is not known for the best economic system and or highest GDP, the idea was, much like El Salvador, if Nigeria got it right early, they would basically allow themselves, the country, the system, and their citizens to become incredibly wealthy if they got it right early. I have never been to Nigeria. I've met a couple people from there, but I've also watched documentaries. And as far as I can tell from the news that I've absorbed is that corruption is quite rampant there in many different ways. As of late, we have gotten a near egregious amount of news about Nigeria and the way that they're actually treating the cryptocurrency companies and anyone else who might be a crypto entrepreneur. Understand that we are currently in a system where people are fighting near tooth and nail to maintain the power structure that they currently have. I'm seeing a lot of confusion in a lot of people, and I'll say this as nice as possible, who seem to not understand that regardless of what position someone might hold, whether it be in the White House, in the Congress, or the Senate, they have a near obligation to uphold the power of the US dollar. And a lot of people keep confusing this, thinking that anyone who might be next in line is going to forego the US dollar and completely replace it with Bitcoin. And I ask you, I implore you to please read and do research and understand the way that the power structure actually is. The people who are in power are not incentivized in nearly any way to get rid of the Nigerian currency or the euro or the yen or the dollar and replace it by something that they do not control. You have to understand the actual power structure of the world and the way that things work. Just throwing it out there because I see a lot of confusion, and I don't even think it's confusion anymore, on Twitter, where people are assuming that, and I say it this way, that come November, that Bitcoin will be like the new currency of the US. And I'm like, you're not really understanding exactly what's going on, but that's neither here nor there. In the same exact breath, the people who control the currency and print the money within Nigeria are in no way, shape, or form incentivized to basically allow these companies to come in, bulldoze, and make Bitcoin and crypto kind of the national currency, because then you forego any and all power that you have. When we talk about decentralization and having a system like Bitcoin that is basically made to give people the power, this is why we have so many rules and regulations. It's basically to kind of, at least from what we've seen in the last couple of years, is to make sure that people aren't as incentivized to enter the space. A number of years ago, there were a number of African countries who announced that Bitcoin was banned within their borders. Do you know who announced that Bitcoin was banned? It was all the different central banks. Do you know why the different central banks announced it? Because they realized, much like Turkey and much like many of these other countries, when you talk about the amount of people around the world who are getting into Bitcoin, when you talk about that we have 300,000, remember the other day? 300,000 new Bitcoin addresses over the course of one day. It's because of things like this. People are figuring out what Bitcoin is, but it's not enough. There are billions of people on the planet who need to move into this new financial system. So, over the course of the last couple of years, we've seen a huge amount of backlash of countries either. Oh, also for those of you who didn't know, all of the central banks lied. So remember I told you all the African countries, we had news over the course of a year and a half, because people were filing lawsuits against the central banks, and the central banks and the governments came forward and said, oh no, it was never banned. It was simply that the people from the central bank had a huge campaign where they had ads and all these other things posted around these different countries saying that crypto was banned when it really wasn't. And they said, oh, no, we said we thought it should be banned. So understand, the people who are in power because they print the money and they hold the money. When you have a very corrupt system, you have a few people at the top who hold all the money that they also printed themselves. So what we're seeing especially is this kind of, I guess, end of a light saga of the idea that Nigeria was kind of going to be the champion of Africa as far as like spreading the word of Bitcoin. If they did it properly and they became rich, then other countries would join suit. You kind of get the general idea. They've been attempting to regulate cryptocurrency, so they say, within their borders for the better half of a year, maybe like a little bit more. But a lot of what they're doing is not regulating at all. Imagine like Gary Gensler in the SEC times 3. So for those of you who haven't seen, the reason why this is nonsensical, and they're saying that companies have to get in line over the next 3 days or face enforcement actions, is because also in the news, and I haven't really covered it just because it's a lot to really take in. The news, from what I understand, as far as I'm getting it, is that apparently about a couple of months ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, there was news that apparently Binance didn't have the proper paperwork to be able to work in Nigeria. You know my stance on that. I think that's absolute nonsense because I do not believe, regardless of what any larger company like JP Morgan might be saying, I do not believe that Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, OKX, or otherwise would move into a country, set up shop like a literal physical location, and do business there and not have spoken to regulators. Do you understand how nonsensical that is? No one would do that anywhere. Because you would know that it was a waste of time. Why did we buy this storefront? Why did we start working here? Why did we hire people? It doesn't make any sense. So Nigeria claimed, like a couple of other countries over the course of the last few years, because Binance is so big that other countries want to create their own Binance, and they're also going to flop because other countries and companies have tried doing so before. But Nigeria claimed that Binance did not have the proper paperwork, and then at some point we got news, we, the public, received news that apparently they were trying to go after a couple of the workers who were actually working in Nigeria. We then got news that apparently I think one of them fled, so was the word, and I will tell you, my hand is raised right now. I will tell you I would have also fled, because if you've ever watched any documentary about what happens in a number of these countries, once again, I've never been there. I cannot speak for any actual experiences. I can only go off of the, I want to say 40 to 50 to 60 documentaries I've seen over the course of maybe the last decade about how things work in certain countries. I would have fled as well, because The allegations then became, not only do you not have proper paperwork, but now you're aiding in money laundering and some other, I forgot what other word that they used, but they were basically claiming that anyone who was in the country who was with Binance was basically aiding in extremely illicit practices, and there are repercussions for such things. Once again, I do not assume or even believe for a fragment of a second that anyone from a multi-billion-dollar company would go into a country like Nigeria, which is known for heavy-handed practices, would make sure that they were breaking the law or any type of anti-money laundering, anything, to make sure that they got in trouble with local authorities. Because the way that big businesses work, for those of you who don't know, before you enter a country, you talk with regulators, and then you hire a bunch of lawyers who know the law inside out, backwards, forward, flipped it over and over. They know the laws. This is why a couple of years ago, for those of you who definitely were not here, we had news that Ripple hired a bunch of people who used to work for the CFTC, and I believe 2 or 3 people who used to work for the SEC. That's why when they got the lawsuit, it was, confusing to everyone, because the people who used to work for the SEC know the laws. They were in constant contact with regulators. Usually once a month is the allotted time frame that we hear that these companies are contacting the SEC to make sure that they're regulatorily compliant. So at some point, someone coming forward and basically saying you've been doing something illegal for the last 7 years, it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why all the lawsuits against Consensus and any company from Ethereum and Coinbase and Kraken and Binance US are nonsensical, because they hire people who work with or worked with the SEC. It's less than a 1% chance for you actually breaking a law, because you hire around 13 to 15 people who know the law of the land. So then the allegations were that they were, money laundering and so and blah, 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 blah. And then that turned into the guy apparently fled. News was apparently he was found, don't know how, and then it entered into the news through us quite easily. And I golf clap the transparency of Binance, because we received news that allegedly the people from Nigeria and the government basically came forward to Binance and said, well, if you want this person to be free, just give us a couple $1 million. And I was like, that's always the answer. It's always short-term corruption as opposed to like long-term prosperity and gains. Because imagine if this country had made sure that years ago, we allow and declare that Bitcoin is legal. You cannot use it as legal tender. Please use our local currency. And the government encouraged people to buy Bitcoin, to invest in Bitcoin. At the end of the month, put 10% of your wages into Bitcoin or to a Bitcoin ETF. Bitcoin's price rises. Nigeria becomes incredibly wealthy, incredibly rich. Over the course of the next 20 to 30 years, Nigeria stands as this place that, like, they did it. They made it. They understood from the get-go where this was going to go. They're even backing their local currency by Bitcoin. It is one of the strongest currencies on the planet. No one could have seen this coming. Instead, they scared nearly every cryptocurrency exchange out of their country. The largest cryptocurrency exchange on the planet, who, if they had simply played ball with and actually made sure that they were working together in a collaborative effort, would have probably got them and their citizens unforeseen levels of riches and wealth over the course of the next couple of decades. Instead, no, you kick everyone out. Why? Because you want $5 million right now that you have no idea how to invest. You have no idea what to do with it. And it will continue this cycle of your citizens continuing to live as they currently do, when you could have made sure that you opened up the doors, not only for your country, but for the entire continent. So the news that we recently have received is that apparently, allegedly, I'm not there, I do not know, this person now who is in custody of authorities is allegedly not doing well, like physically. Apparently, he's being held in some sort of a place that is, you're understanding what I'm alluding to. And now there's a huge amount of discussion floating around that people no longer want to do business there. Surprise. Well, I mean, can you imagine trying to go somewhere, making sure that you follow local rules and regulation? One of your employees gets captured. You try and negotiate his, like, please, like he didn't do anything wrong. And they go, oh, you guys have $5 million. And it's like, of course, that's what you wanted. So as it stands right now, the first part of the news was that Nigeria released something saying that, any company who wants to work there needs to hand in paperwork within the next month. But the problem is that nobody wants to work there. Even this is years ago. A lot of companies who were like from Nigeria actually moved to other places around the world because they were like, it's incredibly hostile and unfriendly to do business here. So why would I stay here when I know that I am safer and freer to do business and in many other places? So yeah, it's incredibly insane. The short-sightedness is, I mean, there are a lot of places around the world that a lot of people around the world who don't know how to invest, who don't know how to hold, and who don't know how to like make friendships and partnerships. And I think that this is simply just one of them, one of the kind of news stories. The Blockchain Industry Coordinating Committee of Nigeria represents the nation's blockchain sector. The group has raised concerns about the nation's international reputation. What? That's crazy, right? I guess not really that crazy, but yeah, it's absolutely terrible. One of my things that I've thought over throughout the years, and this is like a throwback to 2017, 2018, is I'm a really big advocate for time doesn't make any sense, but just like seeing where things go. Because I remember being like years ago, I was like the countries that adopt crypto first will be the winners. If this entire Bitcoin experiment ends up taking off and we get to a $1.4 million Bitcoin, $3.3 million, $11 million per Bitcoin in the year 2048, the countries and the people who made it first, who got into the market, will be the winners. But we're seeing this gigantic level of pushback. I understand that the pushback is coming from they don't want the old system to collapse because they control the old system and this is how they make their money. But also, even just from like a regulatory kind of thing, if you can't control it, if you cannot control Bitcoin and the blockchains, regulate them. Make sure that people within your borders, you can play together and still make money together. And this is, once again, for those of you who are or do not know how history actually works, look into like the actual strength of the US dollar. This is a constant discussion that we're having. A lot of people don't know. It's the same exact thing with the people who are like talking about BRICS, BRICS, like that, whatever. I'm like, you don't get how strong the US dollar is. The fact that we've come this far with Bitcoin in the US is actually quite spectacular, but it makes a lot of sense as to why this government, the previous US government, and the SEC are doing what they're doing. It's to hold up the strength of the world reserve currency. We have Bitcoin in front of us, like lightly beginning to tip the balance, and people don't understand what that means, even for adoption or for all of you in the future, or what it could mean for the world. But yeah, please read up on history. Always learn more. Watch documentaries. It is it's good for you. It's good for your brain, and it's also good for your wallet. So in conclusion, I assume that this is kind of the end of the end for Nigeria, as like in the crypto space. I think, of course, things will still exist in their country. But as far as like the major companies that we have now, the Binances, the Coinbases, yada, 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 I would never do business there. Ever, like literally ever. I would never even think in like a decade's time, I'd be more than fine doing business in Europe, in North America, in Latin America, where we do not get any kind of news like this. It's a gigantic shame. It's a real gigantic shame. But, you know, once again, people who are in power and corruption are very strong things. If you get any inkling that you as the money printer would lose power from people adopting something that you did not create and you do not control, that's where the rift begins. So, yeah, this is why a lot of times, if for those of you who weren't here years ago, we got a lot of news in countries that are faltering economically, that their citizens were, you know, we could see the new Bitcoin addresses opening or opening up new accounts on these crypto exchanges around the world. Or even people like transacting in stable coins, like as a means of, you know, not having to deal with swapping from one currency to another, going to the window and doing all blah, 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 blah. And why these things get struck down so quick. If the entire world could exist on a brand new system, the people who don't have the majority of that system, they lose all that power. What happens to the wealth? So like when we talk about, you know, if a company bought 14,000 Bitcoin in one day, you sit there and you go, well, prices are down. Who cares? And it's like, when you talk about the idea of that takes away from 14,000 millionaires and billionaires on the planet who will never be able to own an entire Bitcoin. You're talking about the wealthiest families on the planet who are... they thrive off of the current system. This is how they've made their money. Imagine we switched to a Bitcoin standard and these families could not even buy an entire Bitcoin. What happens to their wealth? There's a reason why you keep seeing such pushback. It's because they want the old system to continue and to thrive. If the entire world is using a new system, imagine the tens of thousands of wealthy families who then become normal people or have to like rush and buy fragments of Bitcoin. That's what all this accumulation is about. Like, that's the significance of it. When you see this millions of Bitcoin accumulation over the course of a short period of time, it's them consolidating, making sure that if Bitcoin goes to $11 million, that they have some. Do you understand when I talk about the actual shift of wealth, like this money transfer, this wealth transfer? We're witnessing it right now. So you see prices go down, you see prices fluctuating. You hear that there was, 13,000 inflow of Bitcoin. This company just bought so-and-so Bitcoin. Wales just bought $1.3 billion worth of Bitcoin. They're hedging. If Bitcoin makes it, we need to make sure that we have some. And there are tons of people and there are tons of countries and tons of places and institutions who are not in it because they go, no. No, like, we need to keep the system the old way. If Bitcoin makes it, excuse my French here, they're fudged. So when you see pushback like this, it's for a reason. The people in power want to remain in power. If Bitcoin becomes the new form of power and they don't own it or control it, they have no power. The people do. I wish more people got into the actual, if you get a chance, to read any books or anything like that about Satoshi, like the idea of Bitcoin. Read and listen to stuff from Andreas Antonopoulos. He has a YouTube channel. He still has a lot of his older videos. He doesn't post as much. Listen to his original talks and what he used to discuss and what was going to happen. Like I told you years ago, I started watching his videos a long time ago. And everything he said is now coming true. We're in the pushback phase. We're in we're no longer being taken as a joke or being laughed at. They understand that crypto is something that will topple the old system. And this is why, instead of, cheering when rich people are buying tens of thousands of Bitcoin, those 10,000 Bitcoin should have been bought by people in Nigeria, millions of people within Nigeria. Those 3,400 Bitcoin accumulated by that other rich company should have been accumulated by people in Egypt, in Morocco, in South Africa. We need normal people in the space to give people back the power. Anywho, yeah, I do think that's going to do it for this video. Pay attention to history, look at what's happening. And as always, if you know people who are legally able to get into Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin and learn about it, teach them. Teach people what the system is, what inflation is. Teach them what Bitcoin is. Teach them about the scarcity of Bitcoin. Show them the numbers. Show them how much Bitcoin is being accumulated by these very wealthy people. And usually it kind of goes from there. I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See